Hi, I'm Pete and welcome to Just a Few Acres Farm. There are signs finally that spring is in the air. Most of the snow is melted, we're starting to hear the spring bird songs, and mud season has arrived. In this video I'm going to talk about how we manage our Dexter herd in the late winter, dealing with mud season, getting them out on pasture, dealing with late pregnancy, and calving season. So stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Thanks. These are some of last year's calves, and they're mostly off their mom's milk by now and they're eating a lot of hay, but they're growing well. They'll grow even faster once they go out onto fresh grass next month. The thing I wanted to get out of the way right off the bat is the mud. It's muddy, and our cows get muddy in the winter. It's just a product of the climate we lived in. I had a comment on one video where somebody said, well, you should put mulch or hay in your pasture. It'd take about 20 semi-loads of either to dry this place off, and it would only be temporary. It'd be wet again. This is our winter pasture for a reason. It's our worst growing field, and it's only probably 1.5 acres at most, but we've got runoff from our pole barn that makes it wet, and it's also just low. So it gets muddy in the wintertime, and there's no two ways around it. If we had 3 or 4 animals, it wouldn't, but with 30 animals, mud's just a part of life. The other factor that affects the wetness in here is this is mud season, and mud season is when the snow melts but the frost is still in the ground, so the water can't percolate down through the soil. It sits on the surface above the frost, and if cows tromp through it, they churn it up into mud. Oh, we have some others joining us. It is muddy, and dealing with mud is a byproduct of the way that we feed hay. We choose to feed hay in the barn where there's very little waste and give them a winter exercise yard. We could go the route of unrolling bales in the field, but there are a lot of logistics problems with that for us. Number one, we've got to keep our fences up all winter, and we have problems with deer running through the fences in the winter. Number two, we have to navigate deep snow in the fields with the tractor carrying a heavy bale. That is not realistic for us. Number three, that tractor is going to tear up the field when we're going through the field. And number four, it's a pain in the butt and it's really time consuming. So for all those reasons, we choose to feed hay in the barn and have a muddy pasture. Some mud on the cows doesn't hurt them, and it'll be gone as soon as they're out in the spring rains in the pasture, and everything will clean right up. The grass will start growing in here again, and it works out fine. We've been doing it this way ever since we started. My family did it this way for years before I started. The cows all lined up like I'm going to let them out into the field, but they got to wait a while yet, and I'll show you why. We've only had a few sunny days here, and the temperatures have been in the 40s, maybe they've hit 50, but already the fields are starting to green up a little bit. Nothing's growing yet, but it's starting to green up. So this is the start of a cycle that happens in about the next 4 to 6 weeks. The frost will leave the ground, the grass will start growing. A couple weeks after the grass is really starting to grow, and a couple weeks before the cattle go out onto it, I'll be spreading a heavy application of compost, which comes from our winter bedding packs, composted for a year. So this would be from the winter of 2018-2019. This is the compost that's going out on the fields in a few weeks. It is a mixture of cow manure, pig manure, chicken manure, wood chips, straw, hay, and it is such a brew of beneficial bacteria as well as straight fertilizer that it'll really kickstart the grass and get it going. We'll start by grazing the cattle in what we call a whole field arrangement. Our whole fields are about 5 acres each, and in the early spring when there's not a lot of growth out there, we'll be letting them graze each whole field. Once the grass really starts growing in May, we'll start subdividing the fields and doing mob grazing, or the modified mob grazing that we've been doing for the past few years called strip grazing. I made a video about that last summer. I'm not real happy with strip grazing, and so I would like to find a better alternative. I don't think that the cows are leaving enough behind because they have access to that area that was grazed on previous days. They're nipping the grass too close. They're not leaving as much as I would like. So I've been watching a lot of Greg Judy's videos. He's great for that, and he's been giving me some ideas from the videos. But I'll show you what the problem is, and this is a simple layout of our farm. So I'll start with what we call the home pasture, which is the grove. And that's where the water is, and that's where the shade is. There's trees in here, and they need access to shade in the summer because that black coat and the sun, heat is more of an issue with cattle than cold is. So they need to be able to get to the grove because that's really the only treed place on our farm except for the hedgerows beside the fields, which you get some shade from parts of the day, but they need a place where they can access it pretty much all day. Now from the grove, which they always have access to because there's water and mineral and shade here, we've got a bunch of fields around it. We've got one that comes over here like this, one that comes down like this, and these are each about 5-acre fields. We've got a field that comes down like this. We have a field over here, and we've got a field that runs back here. Now, whichever field we're strip grazing on, we run a fence line. Say we're starting in this field, we'll run a fence line down here, and we'll strip graze that and move this fence this way. As we move the fence, we'll leave an alley for the cattle to get back to the grove. So as the fence moves, it may come over to here, and then we have a back fence which keeps them off of this first area, and this is the area they're grazing. And this fence moves ahead every day. And then once a week or so, the back fence comes up to keep them off the other grass. But the problem is they're on one patch of ground too long, even though they're getting access to new grass every day. So what are the alternatives? Well, the alternatives are to, as Greg Judy says, start with a simple subdivision, let them graze this side. When they move over to that side, create an alley back so that they can get back to shade and water and mineral, and then continue to subdivide. So after they're done grazing this, put them on this, and let them graze that, and then move it over to this, you know, and put our alley back up, let them graze this, on, and the paddocks can get smaller and smaller as the grass starts to grow faster and the pasture starts to get ahead of us. The issue with this is it is a ton of fence reconfiguration, and remember, we're doing this daily. So after mulling this over, I think that the easiest thing for us to try is, we'll call it a hybrid strip mob graze or something like that. Maybe 2 parts mob grazing, 1 part strip grazing, where we start with the same strip that we would normally start with, and then the next day we move this fence over, or we actually build a new fence, and we take this fence and we start making our alley here. So now they're grazing this piece right here, back to the grove always if they want to. Then the next day we just leapfrog. So this fence comes down, comes up here, and the alley comes like this. And so we're moving it across the field, but instead of moving the back fence once a week, we're moving it every day, or maybe every 2 days at the most, to get that left grass behind. Remember, a third grazed, a third left standing, and a third trampled by the cows is what we're aiming for as far as grass growth goes. We're going to try it. We'll see how it goes. You'll be there with us, so you can see how it goes as well. But I think that it's a common issue for people who have small herds that mob grazing is a whole lot of labor for not a lot of animals. If we had 300 animals, it would be completely different. We'd probably be moving them twice a day like Greg does. But with 30 animals, we're kind of at the transition of what the best way is to keep them on good grass, keep good pasture growth, and do what we feel is right as far as mob grazing. A couple weeks after we move the cows out to pasture, in late April, calving season starts, and the cows are in their 3rd trimester now, which is the period when they need the most protein, making sure they've got the right mineral mix and good hay. So we're feeding now for the 3rd trimester, 2nd and 3rd cutting hay, which is a mixture of grass, alfalfa, and clover. This bale happens to be mostly grass, but you can see some alfalfa in here and clover. And the cattle eat this stuff up. The cows are getting big. They're starting to look like barrels with their calves. She's a nice round mama. Waddles when she walks. Here's old Prudence. She's barrel shaped too. What a profile. Have to put a wide load sign on her rear end. Here's Patty, our herd boss, and she's big with calf as well. Hanging low. Right, Patty? As I said, we start calving at the end of April, and there's a lot of thinking behind that. We used to start calving in early April, but we never knew whether the grass would be growing well enough to have the cows out when they started calving, and we really like to calve on clean pasture. The mom's teats stay clean, the calf stays clean, there's a lot less chance of parasites, scours, all that kind of stuff. So they go out to the field before they start calving, and we only calve from April probably through the beginning of July. No calving any other time of the year. I don't know about you, but I am really looking forward to spring. It's been a tough winter, and seeing that sun out makes a big difference in my outlook. And I am really looking forward to getting the cows out and showing you all what the heart of grazing season looks like. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope you have a great day and the weather's cooperating like it is here, and I'll see you next time.